It's now been nearly 22 years since Chris Webber called a timeout he didn't have, and North Carolina beat Michigan. Tar Heels fans won't ever forget it. It was Dean Smith's last national title. It should have been a moment Dean Smith cherished until he passed away Saturday night, but in his final years, Dean Smith began to fade. It was only ever referred to as a progressive neurocognitive disorder that affects his memory. It stole memories of a life well lived from a great man. Dean Smith said he couldn't bring himself to curse because he knew his parents would not have approved. But that doesn't mean he shied away from speaking out, not on the court, and not off either, showing support for the civil rights movement again and again in the 1960s. He learned that from his parents. His father integrated the high school team he coached in the 1930s. John Raley of the Winston-Salem Journal asked Smith several years ago about taking public stances, like against a war or the death penalty. Smith said, quote, "I'm not saying I'm more important than anybody else, but if people ask me what I believe, I go ahead and say it." Other coaches didn't always appreciate what he had to say, or what he did, and certainly didn't appreciate how often he won. Maryland's Lefty Driesell reportedly once gathered the other ACC coaches and said, quote, "We've got to get together and do something about Dean. I'm tired of him whipping us all the time." Jim Valvano, in true Jim Valvano style, said, "Tell you what, Lefty, when you play him, I'll send my best guys over. When I play him, you send yours. Maybe we'll have a chance." That might have been the only thing that could have worked. 879 wins. When he retired, no one had ever won more games. And when he broke that record, he was embarrassed. Smith admitted he didn't like anyone keeping track of coaching records. It was clear he meant he didn't like the attention they brought. That sense of self, that sense that he was a teacher first, that his individual worth shouldn't and couldn't be measured by victories or championships, that was at the heart of, as he put it, the Carolina way. Even in the final years, when Smith had been hollowed out by the cruelty of the disease that won't be mentioned by name, the Carolina way was a beacon of light for a great soul lost in darkness. The writer Tommy Tomlinson recounted a story. A friend came over and played songs Dean might recognize, but there was no reaction. Then, the friend tried one last song, UNC's alma mater. Dean stood up and sang every word. Yes, when it was over, he immediately disappeared and returned to the darkness. But in that moment, the real Dean Smith had returned. That's the Dean Smith who will never be forgotten.